Hello. Today we will be detailing the use and care of a pair of 6-inch digital calipers. Before we begin, it's important to note that you should never apply excessive force to any part of the caliper during operation or storage. Excessive force applied to the caliper at any point in time can cause damage to the caliper, and excessive force applied to the caliper during measurement can cause damage to the part face or an inaccurate measurement. It is important to never submerge the device in water or expose it to moisture in any way because this device is an electronic device. It is susceptible to water damage. Alright, beginning with the front, we have these front jaws. These front jaws can be opened and shut. We call these the external jaws because they are very good at measuring external diameters or external part measurements. Up top we have the internal jaws. These jaws are very good at measuring internal part measurements or internal diameters. If we move to the back here, to the butt end of the caliper, and when I open and close the sliding mechanism, you will see a depth probe that extends and retracts with the mechanism. This depth probe is very good for measuring the depth of holes or ledges. And then if we want another way to measure ledges, on the back here, we have two separate steps. One of these, this one here, is called the shoulder, and this one here is called the upper end of the caliper. By changing the distance between the two of these with the sliding mechanism, we can use that to determine a measurement. Moving back to the front, you'll notice up here we have a locking screw. And this allows us to lock the caliper in any position. So given a certain measurement, we can lock that measurement in place. We have a upper ruler, which is a metric ruler. This reads in millimeters, and a lower ruler, which is an SAE, or Standard American Equivalent ruler. This reads in inches and fractions of inches. This allows you to acquire quick measurements from the position of the jaws using just your eye to read to the edge of that ruler there where the jaws are, and that does not require the screen to be turned on, so it is better in some scenarios. Now, to the bottom side of the sliding assembly, we have this disc here, and this is called the thumb wheel. This allows us to move the sliding assembly in much smaller increments, much more accurate increments than you are able to do with your bare hand on the sliding assembly. This allows us to just slow down and get an accurate measurement. To power on the display, we can press this middle button here, marked on and off, and that will turn the display on. The button to our left allows us to change the mode. So right now you can see that it is currently reading in millimeters. We can press this once to change the unit of measurement to inches with the remainder expressed in a decimal point. We can press the mode button again to change the unit of measurement to inches with the remainder expressed in a fraction form. And we can press the mode button again to cycle back to millimeters. Now you may have noticed that when I turn the calipers on, we begin in a negative measurement. Now this is not something you want to happen in normal operation, because what can happen is now when we close the jaws, we are 5.3 millimeters off, and that is a bit of a problem. So to solve that issue, we have this button on the right hand side marked the 0 button. Pressing this button at any time will set the current position to 0. So now we have set the closed position to 0, and our measurements should be accurate. If we would like to, we can set this position out here to 0, and now we'll be reading in negative millimeters. So we reset that closed position to 0, and we are ready to start measuring. So I have this little block here. We're going to start with an external measurement today. We would begin by turning on the calipers, so we'll turn those on. Then we will ensure they're zeroed by pressing the jaws together and pressing the 0 button. Now we will open the calipers with the thumb wheel to a size larger than the block we will be measuring, and we'll place either end of the external jaws on the opposite sides of the block, squeezing gently with the thumb wheel. Now we don't want to squeeze too hard because it's important that we just measure to the edges, the outer edges of the block. If we squeeze too hard, you could create an inaccurate measurement because you could force the calipers to be in a position where they're bending out of the way instead of just resting on the edges of the block. Or if this block is made out of steel, if this block was made out of a different material, say a plastic or some kind, excessive force to the calipers could cause a problem where the plastic would bend out of the way and you would no longer get an accurate measurement to the edges of this block. So we're going to want to, now that I've been messing with it, we should redo it. Check that the calipers are calibrated. Let's see. Looks like they are. We can go ahead and measure this block. I'm going to insert the block into the jaws and gently maneuver the jaws until they're just contacting the outer edge. Then I will reach up here and turn the thumb screw while maintaining pressure on the jaws to ensure that they are flat against the block. We can see we now have a measurement of 10.39 millimeters. Now, to ensure this is an accurate measurement, what we want to do is we want to take and see if we can jiggle this block just a little bit. And that lets us know that all we're doing is barely touching the block with the sides of the external jaws. We just want to feel a little bit of surface resistance. We just want to feel those surfaces touching each other. It would be bad if we couldn't move this at all, because we want to ensure that all we're doing is touching the surface and not warping the surface in any way. So now that we have an accurate measurement, we can go ahead and record that. And once we've recorded our measurement, we can undo the thumb screw, the locking screw at the top, and we can open our jaws back up, shut them, and turn it off. I often like to lock this into place in the off position. You don't have to, but it's something that I often do just to make sure that it's not wiggling around when I put it back into the box. And this is the operation of a 6-inch pair of digital calipers.